Good to have you on again.
Yes, thank you. Good to be back.
You just arrived from Bali and I saw you were already barefoot in the snow on the first day. Why do you do that?
I mean, I feel not just with the snow, but in general, I think it's really important that we just embrace the natural elements that are there. So like when I come to Bali, the first 24 to 48 hours, I stay without AC. I stay inside the jungle, high humidity, and just like really embrace whatever elements are there. And of course, we are in the winter time now in Iceland. So what do we have here? Lots of snow. So I came out from the airport and I just didn't bring a jacket with me. I was just there in my t-shirt and a little zip-up hoodie and then shoes off, just go in the snow, allow the body to kind of like feel, okay, where are we now? What's happening? And of course, like earthing, using the earth energy.
You don't do AC the first days?
No.
In Bali?
Oh, usually I don't really use it at all, but specifically the first 2 days I go like deep into the jungle and then I stay there. And then usually after 2 days I go into like a villa instead, where there is a swimming pool and stuff.
Yeah.
There is a pool in the jungle, but it's just a waterfall, of course. But so there is also that.
You have a place in Bali, like...
Yeah, I've been working for 6 years. I've been working on it. Mm-hmm. When I came there 6 years ago, there was just nothing, just wild jungle. And I met a shaman who lived there, who became my teacher, my spiritual teacher, the one I follow on the spiritual path. And this year is actually the first time ever that I'm going to allow people to come from Europe with me into that place to study. And it's quite intense. It's going to be 1 month training. So it's not easy. It's not like Instagram, what you see on Instagram, friendly, like we are all super happy. And it's not gonna be like that. It's quite tough, right? We have like caves into the mountains where I sat there myself, right, for 10 days straight, where you are fasting and you in the darkness and you just sit inside the cave, praying, meditating, seeing whatever.
10 days?
Yes. Seeing whatever is there to see. There's a lot to see in the mind. All for every day, there's something to see.
When you do that for 10 days, like what do you don't eat anything?
I eat fruit, yeah, fruits.
Fruits?
Yeah, fruits.
Only fruits?
Yeah, sometimes I have coffee also that they will bring, but not every day. It will usually be so you can stay awake in the night. So like, let's say maybe at 6 or 7 o'clock, obviously you lose completely time of what time is when you're inside, but then they will bring it in the nighttime and then you can just stay awake.
Why stay awake in the nighttime?
It's, there's like different, I just want to say before I say this, that I'm not recommending people to not sleep in general. It's like, it should be done under guidance and under like safe environments like this. But there is certain things that you can achieve through the meditation practices without sleep. So when you sleep less and less, you kind of drop deeper and deeper into like a trance state, like a state of trance, where of course you can access more information. And
how do you see it? Like, I think this is, at least for a person like me, this is what I would fear the most is just staying somewhere completely in silence, darkness,
it's
nothing,
hardcore.
and you're facing all that's inside.
Everything. Yes, literally everything.
What's your experience on doing it yourself?
Of course, it's not something that you should just start with. Like, it's not like, oh, today is my first day of meditation. I'm gonna go into 10 days into a cave by myself. That's not like, it's better to start somewhere else. I had a practice at one point where I did 31 days of silence, where we didn't speak for 31 days, where we were a group of people together with a teacher and we were studying. And that was kind of the first like big experience I had of it. And I guess there, the main thing that I saw, I was quite young. I was 24, I think, or 23 when I did it. And that was like the first time where I really saw like, okay, wow, my mind is really crazy. Like, and everyone's mind, it's not just my own, it's like everyone's mind. We are completely crazy when we sit and we begin to see like all the patterns coming up, but there is no one speaking. There is nothing that is bringing that up. We'll just, if you have anger inside, you'll feel anger. If you have fear inside, you'll feel fear. If you have sadness inside, you'll feel sadness. But maybe for the first time begin to realize that sadness doesn't belong to other people, or that anger doesn't belong to other people. It is just my anger, right? It's not because of anyone. Where before that, for me especially in that time, I always thought that I was angry because of someone else, right? It's like because this person has said this, or because this thing had happened in the world, or whatever. But then all of a sudden there, I was angry with a German guy. And I think it took me almost 10 days to realize that the only thing that guy had done for those 10 days was just to walk into the room, in silence, of course, didn't say anything, and sit down on the mat like five spots further down than me, right? And I just thought he was so annoying. And then there was kind of the first where it was like clicked for me, and I was like, wow, he has not done, like, has absolutely done nothing, just sat around 5 meters away from me meditating.
But isn't it also like if you're sitting that long with all those things maybe you're afraid of, like anger, sadness, behind it, once you sit with it, there is peace and bliss,
for sure,
and the good things are there also.
Oh yeah, for sure. You just have to get. Usually, it's like the first part of your practice, like time where you practice. That's where you have to really like clean up everything, right? Which a lot of people in modern society, they maybe skip that part a little bit. They go just straight to only singing and like, hey, we are so happy. But it should be, if you follow the traditional ways, it's like the first part is like you really clean up, or like you make inventory, right? Like we do in 12-step programs also, where you really start taking responsibility, accountability. That part is usually really intense. When you go through it, it's heavy, it's sucks, because you see that all these things was your own things, and it was me who did it, and you know, all of that stuff, of course. Next part is usually like bliss, and then ego starts to develop, like spiritual ego usually becomes really strong in the second part of the journey, where you begin to think like, yeah, I'm much better than everyone, I'm more happy, I'm more spiritual, I'm more wise. That's where it's really important to have a teacher for that part. That's also something a lot of people nowadays, they just skip that part because it's really comfortable if you are just in that like spiritual ego. And then kind of the third part, or the like towards more like the university degree, we could say, of spirituality, everything is just how it was all the time. Like it's just normal. Like we're just experiencing all of the different things, but I'm not more blissful or less blissful. I'm just more centered in it. I don't get lost as easy into the emotions. So yeah, that when you're in that stage, that is when it's advised to then go and do something like sit inside of a cave or sit in silence for like longer periods of time. Because if you do it too early in the process, it can be too much also for people, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
I'm allowing, I think, right now I have 3 people that will go with me to Bali, which is very little, of course. So it will not be just anyone who will come. There's people who have already studied with me for 2 to 3 years, doing their practice is very dedicated.
We were going to talk about we're going to talk about a lot of things, but we were going to talk about masculinity. We talked a little bit about it last time.
We did talk.
Maybe in a triggering way for some people.
I think so.
but we were going to talk about like what it is to be a fully grown man, how to deal with your inner child, how to allow yourself to go into full commitment. Have you been realizing things about yourself in the last 2-3 years?
So much. I mean, especially in the last few months, because I became a father, right?
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So, of course, that's like a huge like metamorphosis, right? Like we go really from like boy to man, because all of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay, actually, now I'm someone's dad, right? They will look up to me and will hear things about you. And so there's like a lot of things that comes in with that. But also before that, because obviously, like we spoke about last time, I come from like a background where masculinity is very present in the underworld. Maybe toxic masculinity, but nevertheless, it's very masculine, and there is like very strong codex that you follow. And then I kind of came into the spiritual environment, and I was really shocked in many ways of how men interacted like maybe females would interact, but just among men they would interact like that. And it was so strange, like the concept, and it still is strange for me, the concept, of course. And then I tried to kind of adapt to that, and that was really horrible because I couldn't really adapt to being in just the feminine energy. And then coming out, and then again I went more into like the toxic masculinity. And then I feel now in the last year or something, I've been more integrated into maybe what we can call like divine masculine, if there is such a thing, but maybe more healthy masculine principles. So before I came on this talk, because we had talked a little bit, you and me, on SMS or on text, I actually started asking people that are close to me, like what do you feel makes a man? Like, what makes a man a man? Like, what is the characteristics of it? And then there was something that was actually really shocking for me. That was like people, they would say really basic things. Like for me, it's like really basic, but maybe it's not basic in the in the outside world. But just things like they will look you in the eyes when they speak, and I was like, yeah, of course, like definitely, that should definitely be on the list, right? That you have like clear eye contact. But I guess a lot of those old school values maybe are getting lost in society.
I think so. I think so, for sure. Like, it's a thin line, all this talk about toxic masculinity, but at the same time, I think a lot of guys that maybe they hit a wall in their lives, like you did. In a like your way was exaggerated maybe, but a lot of guys, they hit a wall, and then they maybe go into something like yoga, meditation, something. But then after a certain period there, they realize I am becoming way too feminine. I have to honor my masculinity also. Yes,
definitely. It's also super unsexy, right? Like for the females, it's also unsexy if you have men that are not like established in who they are as a man. And that's, of course, where we need each other, first of all, as men, as brothers. Like we need to have other men to mirror ourselves in. To learn those things. But I mean, even something like a handshake has changed so much. Like if you shake hands with a 16-year-old, or you shake hands with like our grandfathers, they have a very strong, usually very firm handshake, where now it's almost like this, like...
It's a good point.
Like it's so like weak, the handshakes, right? It's almost like they're afraid to shake your hand, many young people. And I feel like that kind of... It's so simple, but it kind of explains really like what has happened to the men, that we are becoming these creatures that are sitting by the computer, and we are not maybe really putting our primal energy into anything. And then when it's put into something, it goes into like a porn addiction or something which is super unconstructive, of course, for ourselves, instead of actually having that role in society. And there is no one who can give it to us, right? Like we are the ones who have to take it, which I think is also one of the qualities of the men. It's like we are the hunter from the beginning. We were always the hunter. So we can't expect the women to give us the role of the man. Like we are the men. So we have to just take that responsibility and say, okay, I'm the man. And then, of course, find out what does that mean.
What does it, like commitment? We were going to talk about commitment.
Yeah,
there are many levels to commitment.
For sure.
But what I have been realizing in my life is, like I see throughout the years, I've had this tendency to be half in, not all in. And I think I think my inner child like really wants me to develop this skill set of being all in, going full in. And I have been actually like cultivating that in the last 2 or 3 years. But how do you see like it can come in many levels?
Yes.
And many forms.
Yeah, in so many like facets of it. Okay, like if we bring it just for fun, right? If we bring it back to like old school principles, then it's like word is bond, right? That's like a classic one. It's like if you say something that's a bond between two people, like before we had written contracts or anything, right? And I feel like that's also something that people are not respecting anymore. Like in a general, it's like people will say like, oh yeah, maybe I come, or like, yeah, I'll probably come to that party. Like it's not like, not for everyone, of course, but for many people, it's not clear. And people are happy to just like skip a commitment. Of course, I'm organizing retreats and tours and working with so many, like such a diverse group of people. And it's just so clear that like, it's not a lot of people that are actually willing to make 100% commitment to anything. People will always have like a small back door open, right?
Yeah.
This is just like, we're talking on a very surface level, of course. But if we go into like the deeper principles of it, I think there is usually like a fear of success, really. Like anything we are afraid to commit 100% to, there is like a fear of that success. There is like a success behind it that we either don't feel good enough at, like I don't feel like I'm worthy of having a life partner. I think that was my big one, right? Or the fear of failure, right? I mean, you could see that fear. It's the same fear, basically.
But this thing you were bringing up about the words, there's, I think it was maybe, I would say 6-7 years ago, or even longer, I stopped using words like, I'm gonna try to come. I will probably come.
It's like, just say no, right? It's like just...
When you stop using these words yourself, because you see, what am I telling myself if I'm saying I'll probably do this, or I'll try to do this? And then when you stop doing it yourself, you start noticing how many people do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you're like, and you start to see, okay, this person says, yeah, let's aim for doing that. Let's try doing that. I take it as okay, it's not gonna happen.
No, definitely
it's not gonna happen.
It probably won't happen. It probably won't happen, right?
And it's so interesting how we have these subconscious layers of how we use words. And we are we are basically telling ourselves that we don't trust ourselves to commit and say, I am gonna do it or I'm not gonna do it.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, for me, like where the biggest one was it was in my teachings many years ago, where I kind of always just gave myself like, I had a retreat. I know I'm really good at what I do. Like I'm very, very skillful in public speaking and in whatever, delivering a message, right? And that means that I don't really have to practice anything. I could just kind of wing it. Like, let's say we go to a radio interview or TV interview, you and me, and I could just wing it and I would be like, it'll be pretty okay. So I just always lived on that until a day where I was like, okay, why am I not just preparing really well? Like, why am I not just giving my 100%? And of course that came from like, okay, the fear of being judged from people. Then if I didn't do my 100%, then I could always go back to that feeling of like, yeah, but like I just did 80%. So it's all right. I was kind of like taking like a little bit of that fear of like, how would people judge me? Or like if people didn't like it, or if I made a mistake, then I could always just like kind of backtrack to that, right? And then in later life, it was, I mean, also in earlier life, but I only figured it out later in life. It was really about women, right? Of like, okay, I always had my whole life, right? Since I was very young, I always had the like repetition of being the one. If I came to a party, I always had at least 4 females with me, right? At least. There was like, since I was very young, I was known for that. Nicolai is coming, there's beautiful women coming, perfect. That meant I was, of course, invited to all the parties, that's great. So I always had that kind of repetition, playboy, whatever, like player, which is great. In that stage, it's great, of course. But then when you really dive into it and you're like, okay, what is that, right? Like, and then that came, of course, it's like, okay, wow, it's really coming from that fear of commitment, right? Fear of being hurt from going into like a really deep relationship with someone, because that is really scary for everyone. I mean, of course. So it was much cooler to be like the playboy or like he's like the player. That's much cooler to be that than to actually say like, oh shit, I'm really scared of being heartbroken, because of course I tried that like many times in my life. First girlfriend like cheated on me, and that kind of created that whole pattern of just...
Þessi þáttur áskriftaþáttur. Inni á sölvitryggva.is fá áskrifendur aðgengi að öllum útgefnum þáttum, aukaefni og nýjum þætti í hverri viku.